You worked all of your life to get it. What are the most important financial planning steps? Short-term planning is just as important as long-term goals. AARP Director Alan Ormsby and Utah's Commission on Aging Director Rob Ince with additional tips on financial fitness. And we've got a free trip for you to win. It's all next on Living and Aging with Pride, and here's your host, James Brown.
Welcome to Living and Aging with Pride. I'm James Brown, and I keep telling you I'm coming into your house next. You know, financial security, we all need it, we all want it. Well, I got it in the house with me. I want to welcome John Johnson, who's a CFP, and he's going to tell you what that is. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you can prepare to be financially stable as you get older. Welcome, John. How are you, sir?
James, very good to spend some time with you.
Oh, my pleasure having you. Let's talk about this. You know, we get older and we find that we face a lot of crises, and financial is one of the big ills of trying to get older. Do you have enough money for your medication?
Sure.
Do you have enough money for your doctor? Do you have enough money for your lawyer? All of those things require us to have extra cash. Talk about what financial security really means.
Well, financial security encompasses, of course, a lot of things, but living with pride and happiness and security is all a part of that.
Right.
You know, and your organization, you know, is called Living with Pride. And I think that's in reference to a lot of things. In this case, we're talking about financial security.
Absolutely.
So this is something that I've thought about for 30 years, James, something that
Well, you've got 30 years experience in all of
yes, and I loved being a financial advisor. Certainly it was challenging and interesting, but
Right.
the best part of being a financial advisor was being able to help people meet their goals.
Right.
You know, and help them establish goals and to get to a place in life where they've got the things we've just talked about, which is living with pride and happiness and security.
Right.
I think that people often approach financial security in such a way that they don't do enough thinking about it, enough planning.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that if you're going to play a game of basketball, your coach has you do some planning with them.
Right.
If you're going to redo your house, you do some planning. And so planning for your financial future just means taking the time to sit down and really do some thought process, either by yourself or with a financial advisor or your friends, to really think about what you want your life to be in the future.
But many of us face the challenges of surviving, you know, doing what we need to do to continue to live day to day. And so you're telling me that we need to add to that mindset a plan.
Yes, of course. I mean, we all get to a spot in life when we would like to have the option to retire.
Right.
Now, we may not choose to retire, of course,
Right.
but we'd like to have the choice, either for health reasons or personal reasons. And maybe you can only do that if you have enough financial resources to be able to pull that off.
Right. How do we do that? I know you got some kind of groupings or collective. Explain that to me.
Sure. So one of the things I just said is that you could sit down by yourself and friends.
Right.
But when I think about my car or doing my taxes or doing a surgery, I want to get a specialist to come in and help me think about this process.
Right.
And so when I think about financial planning, that's probably true for the majority of us. It would be helpful to sit down with somebody who has done this a long time, who is a professional, and can sit with us maybe a couple times a year to really make sure that we're thinking about our goals and planning for the future.
Right. Well, that's easier said than done. Oh, you can look in Google and I'm on a financial. there's a process in finding and selecting a financial planner. What is that process?
I think when we're out looking for any sort of advisor, there's kind of some certain criteria we might like to consider when we make that choice. One is, I'd like to know if somebody's been in the business for a long time.
Right.
You know, I'd say 5 or 10 years maybe. In addition to looking at their education and their certification, how long they've been in the business, I would also like to know whether or not they're a fiduciary. A fiduciary is a person who by law and by vow has said that whenever they make a recommendation, they will always do it with your best interest in mind.
Right.
Not all financial advisors are fiduciary. And so I think it's important to make sure that you're talking to somebody who really is going to work with your interest in mind first.
We continue our discussion with financial advisor John Johnson next.
From St. George to Logan, from Vernal to Tooele, Utah is as diverse as the communities that call this great state home. We'll never stop telling stories that make a difference to you and your family. When Utah changes, we change with it. Adapting to our new environment, overcoming any and all challenges, and creating memories that last a lifetime. ABC4 News is committed to Utah. ABC4 News is good for Utah.
Our history, like dreams, is made up of stories, giving life, laughter, and the knowledge of what's come before. We find the worth of Utah's history by telling its great stories. And those stories, they help shape our future. You know, all we need to do is stroll about with our eyes open. Catch Worth Watching Mondays and Sundays on ABC4 News at 10. Good for Utah.
So this planning process, how young should I be to start this process of planning for my future, my retirement, my whatever, my kid going to college, all of those kinds of things?
So financial planning or planning for your future really doesn't have to do just with retirement maybe.
Okay.
Maybe it's planning for taking a rock climbing trip in 6 months.
Right.
You know, you want to take off for a month or two to go play. That could be called financial planning. So it's your job and my job as a financial advisor to help you establish your goals.
Okay.
And if you say your goal is I want to take a rock climbing trip, that's great. If you say I want to save for my children's education or save for retirement or buy a house, it's my job to kind of help you go through that thought process so that you can get to those things. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. That makes sense. So the first key part of this is setting goals.
The first part of the financial planning process is setting goals, correct.
And so once we get into that, and I think that's an education unto itself, is we've got to start the process of setting goals. And really setting goals through your life. I want to be healthy, I want to have a good job, you know, I want to make sure I take care of my children right, you know, I want to love my wife, you know, all of those things are goals or aspirations, if you will. And so those are the kinds of things we need to have. Look, we're coming into your living room with financial security, not because we think it's fun to share with you, it's because we want you to be better when you get older, and that is have the time and the ability to nurture your community, because if you're financially secured, it lends itself to giving a contribution back to your community because you can do something and help other people. John, I want to thank you very much, man. This is needed. If there's one significant thing that we need to think about financial security, what is that thing that I go away with that's going to help me get there?
James, I would say get started. Sit down and spend some time thinking about what you want in the future. If you don't establish those goals, you stand less of a chance of getting there. So get started and start thinking about it.
I love it. Now you have it. Financial security is knocking on your door. You just got to open the door. Are you thinking about planning for when you get older?
I'm never gonna get old, so probably not. No, I'm just kidding, but I am absolutely planning for where I want to be at in the future and where I want my career and life to be at.
So what are you doing to make that happen?
I have short-term, long-term plans. One of them is a 5-year goal and where I want to see myself professionally. I just made personal steps in my life. I purchased a home. I take financial literacy classes to make sure I'm staying on top of that. So I just try and stay well-rounded, and I'm a freak about staying healthy too, so that I can have a healthy life when I'm older.
That's a good thing. Are you married?
No.
And the reason why I ask, because sometimes that's a joint kind of effort from the spouse to figure out together what you're going to do. But as a single person, that's pretty smart of you.
Yeah, no one's patient enough for me. I'll be the first to say it.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
All right, bye-bye.
It's not always long-term financial planning. How about in the short term? That's up next, right here on Living and Aging with Pride.
From St. George to Logan, from Vernal to Tooele, Utah is as diverse as the communities that call this great state home. ABC4 News is committed to Utah. ABC4 News is good for Utah.
We find the worth of Utah's history by telling its great stories. And those stories, they help shape our future. Catch Worth Watching Mondays and Sundays on ABC4 News at 10.
Yeah, hello. I'm really not sure if this is what you all do, but I really don't have anywhere else to turn.
My thoughts are going a mile a minute. I left the service last year. My mom just passed away a few months ago.
My buddies from the Army are gone now. I'm really alone.
I feel so stuck.
I'm glad you called. Let's stay on the line and walk through some things.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
I told you I'm going to be in everybody's backyard. I'm coming to you with the facts and the information. Today, I'm lucky. I've got Alan Ormsby from AARP. I got Rob Ince from the Utah Commission on Aging. And we're going to talk about financial security. And they're going to tell us everything they know. Welcome, guys. Thank you for being here. You know, Rob, financial security is a very critical thing we talk about, especially seniors. If they haven't planned, if they haven't prepared themselves, they face a rough road in their after years. What do we do? When should we start preparing to get ready to retire?
So like anything else, good habits for financial security start when you're very, very young.
Right.
And the more you do, the earlier you start, the better off your chances are going to be about being prepared for what will come down the road. We don't know how long we're going to live. But what you want to make sure is you don't outlive your resources.
Right.
But I think the context is really important to understand, is that years and years ago, the corporations of the country used to use as, golden handcuffs, retirement plans where people would work for years and years and years for a company, and they'd build up these retirement plans. That has shifted dramatically in the last couple of decades.
From that to what?
To individual responsibility.
Okay.
So you've gone from a corporate defined benefit plan to a 401k plan,
right,
where it's incumbent upon individuals to set money aside. And that's a real challenge because basically a lot of folks earn money, barely to just make ends meet. And it's difficult then to earmark a certain amount of money to set aside for the future. But where possible, you've really got to try to do that as early as possible so that you can have compound interest work in your favor. The second piece of that is when you are able to save money, is that you put it to work prudently.
Right.
You don't get yourself involved in schemes and scams and ideas that sound too good to be true, because they are. And you just want to make sure you're doing things in a very reasonable and prudent manner so that you can make sure that you've got the assets you need down the road.
So stop and think about what it is, set goals, have a plan, follow the plan, follow the goals, and you make it happen. Now, AARP has got a wealth of programs and things. I want you to add to what Rob said, but first tell us a little bit about all the things you do over at AARP, please.
AARP is a great organization for assisting older adults with information, with advocacy, with outreach, and getting themselves in the best possible place that they can be. You know, as Rob was talking about the idea that 401ks are kind of the new way that most people are saving.
Right.
It made me think about the fact that only about half of us have access to a 401k in our own companies.
Right.
You typically have to work for a big company because the smaller companies don't necessarily have 401ks. So that's one of the things that AARP is advocating for. Is there a way for you to be able to save outside of your 401ks and be able to take that with you and have all the tax advantages? Because Rob's exactly right. The earlier you start, the better your tax advantages are, the more opportunity you have. And if you don't, you're in kind of a struggle where you really have to then be thinking about, you know, we talk about a three-legged stool for retirement. It's your own personal savings, it's work, and many older adults are having to think about going back to work.
Right.
And then it's your Social Security. And, you know, knowing what those three things are, that's when it tells you you're eligible really to retire and be comfortable.
It's sort of like a concept of pay yourself first.
Yep.
And you're taking care of yourself in order to take care of others.
That's absolutely right. You've got to do that. You've got to think about when you are in your 20s and 30s, where you're going to be in your 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Right.
And now, you know, most people live well into their 80s. That's the average. And so you really have to be thinking about, you know, I've got 30, 40 years in my work career.
Right.
I may have 30 years in my retirement career. So how do I prepare for that?
And what do I do? You know, part of that is how to make the plan, how to get the plan. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, and there's no magic to a plan. The magic is just doing it.
Okay.
Putting your ideas down on paper or in some format or working with a trusted source.
So I don't have to be a financial wizard.
No, you don't, because you know what? They have their ideas of what they'd like you to do, and if people have a stake in the game, if they're getting paid to give you advice, chances are, you know, they may tilt you away you may not want to go. Ultimately, you have to make decisions that are good for you, or good for your family, or whoever your circle is that you're working with to build this financial security. But the important thing is you think about it, and I think realistic expectations. When we're young, sometimes we chase the almighty dollar all the time.
Right.
That's the most important thing.
Right.
But I think it's important to have career satisfaction and that you have something that you enjoy doing every day that helps your mental and physical well-being, as well as helps your financial resource. And then whatever that resource provides, you've got to make sure that you've built your budget in for your housing, your food, all transportation within the means that you have, so you're not constantly stressed with debt and expenses that you really can't afford. In order for you to plan for the future, you've got to manage what you have very, very carefully. And that just sometimes takes a little bit of restraint. What's important, what's non-essential, and be able to distinguish between the two things.
When we return, advice from AARP's #1 guy and the Utah Commission on Aging Executive Director, a continued commitment to financial fitness. Please stay right there. We'll be right back.
You've worked hard. Long days, year after year. decade after decade. You've seen a lot of things, enjoyed the good times, and weathered the tough times. You've earned a life that you can call your own, alongside the people you love the most. Retirement worries shouldn't get in the way. But many Americans like you are finding that retiring on a fixed income is harder than they expected. Fortunately, there are thousands of benefits programs that can help. Visit benefitscheckup.org to see if you're among the millions of people eligible for thousands of dollars in benefits to help you age well, so you can focus on what's really important. Benefits Checkup. You've earned this.
If there was a scale, 1 to 3, 5, or 10, how would you rate financial security, the need to make sure you're financially secure?
I would say it's almost up there with health. I mean, ultimately, a life of dignity can be well lived if you've got financial resources to meet your basic needs, and if you've got the health to enjoy it. Would you kind of agree with that premise?
I would absolutely agree with that. I think the long-term happiness, you know, we know money doesn't buy happiness, but what money does buy is freedom.
Right.
And if you're constantly stressed and anxious about your ability to actually make your rent or make your house payments or your taxes, whatever it happens to be, that is a really big barrier to joy and happiness. And I can't see, you know, if you're weighing all of those things out, I can't see much more important than your own finances.
Talk a little bit about Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah, Social Security is it's probably one of the most important social programs that anyone can think about. It's incredibly popular. There's good news and bad news. The good news is Social Security is relatively strong right now.
Right.
The bad news is in 2034, which is not too far away from now, the Social Security Trust Fund will be depleted to the point where the only money that they will have is what's coming in currently, and then it'll go out immediately. And what that means is that for most of us, that by 2034, unless the government does something to prepare, we'll probably get around 70 to 80% of the expected benefit. Now, that's a pretty big deal for people my age, people in their 50s,
Right.
because we're thinking about retirement, and we really need to think about, is that retirement plan that you have, if you had one of those pillars down 20 to 30% from what you expected, you better start saving a little bit more and being a little bit better prepared. Maybe plan on working instead of until the age of 67, maybe you go 68 or 69. Maybe a little older.
And that's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing at all, especially if it's meaningful work that you're choosing. What's tough to me is the folks who are carpet layers and folks who work very difficult, physically demanding jobs. When they get into their 70s, that's a really tough road.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
And I think Alan's point about Social Security, it is one of the most successful social programs that has ever existed in the world. It's fabulous, but we have time, and we've got to have the will of our policymakers to do simple things that will make sure that stays robust in the future. And so we all have a voice in making sure that takes place.
So we need to get our older adults out there, make sure you're voting for the right things and the things that will impact your life.
That's right.
Now, that's what I'm talking about.
Even the middle-aged and younger, because it's going to impact them as well.
Absolutely. Is it something we're missing here? I know you guys got a wealth of knowledge and information in your minds and your hearts, and I want to really thank you a lot for what you do. But don't let us forget something that you got in that brain, please.
Older adults are particularly vulnerable to unscrupulous people in our community. And some people are targeted over and over and over again.
Right.
It's the phone call that says, I'm from the IRS, or I'm from the Department of Criminal Justice, or, or I've got the greatest thing for you, and your warranty's worn out of your car. People are constantly contacted and asked to put money into things that they don't know, or it's a lottery that doesn't exist.
Right.
And if there's anything we can do is plead with people, is that there's a scam a second out there.
Right.
And again, to work with people you trust that have been verified, and don't be taking unnecessary calls, responding to things, thinking you're going to, win the lotto.
Right.
You're not. And all you're going to be doing is or putting dollars in the pockets of these backroom boiler rooms, right? That constantly call people to harass them, and people with means can be harmed.
That's exactly right. The fraud is one of those things that people tend to think, oh, I'm too smart. Let me tell you, the person who is defrauded is more often than not of above average intelligence. They tend to be very smart, very sophisticated. They tend to be a little bit internal and don't share that information with others. So that's one of the things that I think Rob is dead on. Find those trusted advisors. A couple of red flags to just always be aware of. If anybody is pressuring you that it's got to be done today, that's a scam.
Run.
Exactly. Run, don't walk away from that. I mean, it is, if it's a good deal today, it'll be a good deal a week from now, it'll be a good deal 2 weeks from now. Talk to those trusted advisors and get them to kind of think through that. Don't ever let anybody pressure you into making financial decisions on the spot. It's just bad policy.
Hey, for you out there, financial security is important. Plan, have goals, understand you need to get advice and direction all the time, whether it's your children or a professional person. I'm James Brown, and you're not, and you're living with pride with me. We love you.
In association with our show's travel partner, Incentivize Travel, Living and Aging with Pride is proud to offer an incredible Mexican vacation to 2 lucky winners to the beautiful Hilton Tulum Riviera Maya all-inclusive resort on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Hilton Tulum Riviera Maya all-inclusive resort is a natural sanctuary situated directly on the white sand and clear waters of a pristine and secluded bay that feels like a private beach. With 735 rooms and suites, 13 all-inclusive restaurants and bars, and a luxury spa, you can disconnect from the ordinary and connect with the extraordinary at this all-inclusive resort. Visit our website, livingwithpride.org, click on the Incentivize Vacation Giveaway, and you'll be entered to win this incredible vacation. Incentivize Travel is your travel company to engage, recognize, and reward. Enter today at www.livingwithpride.org.
Consistent, reliable, dedicated. ABC4 News is committed to Utah, committed to telling your story. Day in and day out, ABC4 News is good for Utah.
Seniors, you deserve a TV show to help you in all aspects of the aging process, from financial to medical, travel to peace of mind. Watch Living and Aging with Pride. Living and Aging with Pride on Utah's ABC4, Sunday mornings at 10:30, and find out more